This is the Welcome to Humanity podcast with thought leader and transformative psychiatrist, Dr. Fred Moss. This show focuses on the betterment of humanity on a global scale. Each episode will leave you enlightened, inspired, and ready to make an impact in your world. Welcome to the show. Welcome to your life. Welcome to humanity. Here's Dr. Fred.
Okay, well, this is Dr. Fred, and welcome to another episode of Welcome to Humanity. And this is the Welcome to Humanity podcast, for which I am the host. And part of being the host of the Welcome to Humanity podcast is I get to meet lots of humans, lots of really incredible humans who are just great examples of what it means to be human and what it means to be part of this great race called humanity. So today is no exception. Who I have with us today is a man who literally began our conversation together. We began our conversation together in any kind of in-depth just a couple days ago. And you'll hear more about that as well. But my God, having now met him and then had the opportunity for the last few days to explore a little bit more about what Richard Million Burke Jr. is about, it is just beyond an honor. It's beyond a pleasure. It's beyond a privilege to have Richard Million Burke Jr. on our Welcome to Humanity podcast as a true and honest VIP guest. So welcome to the Welcome to Humanity podcast, Richard. It's just a pleasure to have you here.
Thank you so much, Dr. Fred. It's a pleasure to be here.
Well, you're welcome. And it's, again, let's just get started. It's so interesting. One of the things that Richard was telling me before the episode started, as we were just preparing for it, is that his middle name has a story associated with it. And I don't know the story. He was going to tell me beforehand, but I'm going to let him put it on air for all of us to hear. As you know, I meet really a ton of incredible people who are up to really big things in the world, and Richard Million Burke Jr. is no exception to this. Each and every one of us, though, are really up to something, right? No matter whether we're taking on some of the big problems or the small problems in the world, we all are facing challenges, both internally and externally. So I've been a psychiatrist and a coach for lots of years, and I've worked with all kinds of people from all walks of life, and I've worked with, more people than I can count, dealing with way more issues than you can imagine, of all sizes and shapes. So naturally, over time, I've developed a number of ways to assist these people in gaining a new sense of freedom and empowerment. And I'm publicly revealing the process and the associated mindset that contributes to using this particular method with maximum effectiveness. It's all laid out in my new book called The Creative 8. You can pick it up at Amazon.com in either Kindle or paperback format. I'd like to offer you a completely free copy in audiobook format. Just go on over to welcometohumanity.net/creative. I definitely look forward to hearing about your Creative 8 breakthrough. Now, let's get back to our conversation with Richard Million Burke Jr.
Welcome to humanity.
Richard, tell us a little bit about how this name Million got to be in the middle between Richard and Burke Jr.
Well, I'd be happy to, Dr. Fred. But first, I also want to thank you for creating this opportunity and wish you great success, continued success on the Welcome to Humanity podcast. It's a wonderful thing you're doing to connect with people that are really contributing to humanity.
Exactly. Yes, my pleasure, and I acknowledge that. Thank you so much for pointing that out. It really is. It's just a labor of love, as they say. It's easy and fun and beautiful. And thank you for acknowledging.
Absolutely. Well, as you said, my name is Richard Million Burke Jr., so I actually have the same name as my father. And for a while, that was kind of disconcerting. As I grew up, I was like, why couldn't I get my own name? But then as I went on, I learned more about the story behind the name. And Million is actually a family name. It's not a name that I've adopted in any way. In fact, my grandmother, her name was Lillian Million. And that's a real tongue twister, obviously.
It is.
Fortunately, her brother's name was much easier to pronounce. His first name was Ten.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, it was Tennessee, but they just called him
10 million. 10. All right.
Yeah. So the funny thing is that my dad, after I was a teenager, he when he gave me that name, he went ahead and said, hey, I gave you your first million. Now go get the hell out of here and get your
Oh my
second.
God. That's hilarious.
So there's a lot of funny things with that, which is great, and it helps, like all of us, to connect us with our ancestry. And I've been very fortunate to know a little about mine, and that's been inspiring and kind of helps create some expectations of what kind of place I have in this in humanity.
It's really beautiful what you point out here, and I think you're going to be a little bit surprised with this next question. But having perused our shared WhatsApp line in Metal International, for which we're both members, I noticed today that you loaded up something about 23andMe, and there was something really there about legacy that's built into that. Have you got some special connection to either legacy or the 23andMe organization, or anything you want to speak to about that particular approach to learning more about one's legacy and where we come from and where we're going?
Yeah, not at all. As far as 23andMe, I just happens to be that today was one of the Amazon special pricing days. I forget what they call it, and I've enjoyed seeing my background in the 23andMe. For me, it was just a verification of the stories my parents were telling me. No real surprises, and it helps contribute to the database of information that's out there. And I'm not afraid of the privacy in those contributions. I welcome the information that it reveals. But I think that going back to the idea of wanting my own name, and at the same time being grateful for sharing the name that my father gave, I think that that's something that we're all really tasked with in life. Whether that is to create the purpose in our life that is behind our name, or to identify what it is that is we're going to take on in life to define ourselves and make our life matter.
Okay. So I hear what you're saying. So on the one hand, you're saying that we each want to have our own unique name. On the other hand, we share our name with all of our ancestors and all of our brothers inside of this human family. And there's something about getting yourself into a unique space of contribution while at the same time realizing that you're a core member of an important group called either human or the Burke the Burke family or something like that. Is this what you're pointing to?
Exactly. Mm-hmm. The question then becomes, what are you going to do to earn your place in the world for the place that you take up? I was raised through my middle and high school years by the Jesuits in Detroit, and the Jesuits.
We talked about that. Yeah.
The Jesuits have a mission in their educational program, which is now co-ed, but where I was at, it was an all-male school, and that is building men for others. And I think that's one of the greatest aspirations you can have, is how do you become a man for others or a woman for others?
Okay. All right. Well, that's really great. And that might be a good launching pad a little bit to discuss what it is that you're up to. And, we met, part of who we are is we're, in this shared community of Metal International, but it turns out that we have many shared communities and other growth and development services that we're involved in, and even our Detroit area upbringing as we go back to the Mile Roads and Coolidge and Greenfield and Southfield and all of those beautiful spaces, 8 Mile Road and all of that in Detroit. And the University of Detroit, and then also like Michigan and Wayne State and that whole deal. What I really want to know, Richard, and what I really think my listeners are interested in is this thing, or like, who are you now? Like, what are you up to today, right now? This man who is walking around with having earned the, standing on the shoulders of your ancestry and building into your legacy. Who is Richard Million Burke Jr. today?
Yeah, well, thank you for asking that. When I was raised, I was very fortunate, as you said. We both spent time, and I grew up in the suburbs of Detroit. I was born in Pontiac, raised in a beautiful suburb of Bloomfield Hills, and went to school in downtown Detroit. And then I did 1 year of college at Albion, and then came out to California, a 19-year-old rebel who thought, he knew more than his parents did, and promptly enrolled myself in the School of Hard Knocks on my own, and have earned my way through life ever since. But I had a very, very fortunate childhood. I was, raised in a Renaissance fashion with many gifts and opportunities. But it was always inculcated in me that of those much is given, much is expected. And I really was confused. How could I possibly live up to that? What,
interesting,
all I was given, could I possibly give back? And I think that so many of us face those questions of trying to figure out who we are. And I've been spending a lot of time thinking about that, not just from me, but from a general answer. And I think that the answer that I've come up with is there's a connection that we have to make between the lessons that we learn from our failures and our successes. And in that connection is the lessons, and those lessons are our gifts to give back. And so you really have to go through a lot of lessons to start to really figure out the connection and what's common and what makes a difference, and what you can give back and what those gifts are. And that's where I spent a lot of time thinking about and trying to figure out, of those much is given, much is expected, what I could give back that would be worthwhile.
Okay. Well, you point to something that a lot of our guests point to, and, we try not to overlook it, but I'm sure our listeners heard you say it's your failures and your successes that contribute to this. And, a lot of times we like to just, as humans, we just overlook our failures, or not spout about them, or not declare them out loud. I mean, some of them are hair raising after all, and some of them are super painful, and some of them are life threatening, and some of them might have hurt others. Some of them, some of them are unspeakable, and others of them leave us in shame or blame or guilt. And even still others we forgot about, or we don't even know that we were involved in, that turned out to be just monstrous failures. And they're just as important, or maybe even slightly more important in some ways, in creating who we are. At least that's what I'm finding out. What's your thought on that?
No question about it. In fact, a failure is a better opportunity to learn more than a success is in many ways. I think that so many of us tend to take successes in stride. We value them and move forward, but we don't necessarily spend the effort debriefing ourselves, trying to figure out what went wrong or what went right in that case. And so we often don't take as much away from a success as we do from a failure. And, maybe that's one of the reasons why I've learned so much, is because of the failures that I've been through and learned from.
That's just fabulous. And again, you join us a small but really fairly unanimous crowd of guests that I've had on this podcast who point to that. This idea that, your extraordinariness, and Lord knows that you really are extraordinary. And I can't wait to share with our listeners some of the things that you've just been doing recently, is a function of all of life's experiences that you've had up to this point. And my goodness, that absolutely includes, and maybe even underlines, some of those failures that you've had along the way. And so what I really wonder if it's time to do now is talk a little bit about the project that you're unfolding, the project that you're so proudly putting forth for humanity and for our youth. And maybe you can tell us a little bit about what that was like, building this. We certainly talked about the last few years, how it went that way, or what's really happened. But my guess is this is possible that this has roots going back like decades. And I sure would want to learn more about it, as would my listeners. So what do you got there, Richard?
Absolutely. I think that, I really think that good solutions have to take into account so many constituents. And there's so much that I could unpack on this project that I've been working on. And but I'll touch on the highlights. So I've been trying to figure out, as I said, what is the best gift I could give back to humanity. And just so you know, I've spent a lot of years involved in community service organizations such as the Big Brothers and Big Sisters, where I've been on the board for 13 years of the Ventura County, California chapter. And
thank you for doing that.
Of course, thanks. And I was the president of that organization for 5 of those years. And when I was on the board, I just saw the kind of impact we could have on youth. And I spent a few years also as an advisor on the national organization to the board of the Big Brothers and Big Sisters of America. And the stories that you hear from the people that are serving are stories of shared experiences that you and I might take for granted, like a trip to the beach or a tumble down a sand dune or an opportunity to go fishing or ride a bike or climb a hill. And these are experiences that many of the youth that were in the mentees of the Big Brothers and Big Sisters, they didn't have until they got a big brother or big sister in their life. And that was just a huge game changer that I saw. And I looked at also going back to when I was young, and I think we can all recognize that we have seen differences in people around us. When I say differences, I'm referring to in wisdom. We know people that around us were talented and gifted in sports, in linguistics of some sort, and in other intelligence skills. But some of the people we grew up with and were just wiser. And I didn't know that word back then. And I just knew that there was something about them. They weren't necessarily more vocal. They weren't necessarily smarter. There was just a calm wisdom in them. And as I kept asking myself through the years, and as I saw these people, what is it that makes them different? Why are they wiser? And the common answer I saw was they had perspective. And the reason is because they had oftentimes traveled. They had gotten out of their community and got to see different things and be exposed to completely different experiences. And when they came back, it gave them perspective. And that's what I saw that we were doing with these youth and the Big Brothers and Big Sisters that was making such a huge difference. And
so you were broadening the base of their life experience that gave them some access to a new level of what you're now calling wisdom.
Yes. And the broader the base that you could create, the more perspective they got. And so I started to look at other facts. And when you look at youth that do a lot of traveling, well, some of them include those that enter in the military. And less than 2% of our youth these days are going into the military. And so what does that say about the other 98% in terms of the missed opportunities that they might have for gaining perspective by going out in the world and doing service? And so there's a leap here that I'm making, but the opportunity of getting perspective is a huge part of ServeOne, which is the concept that I've been working on and just launched this year, which has been a dream of mine to launch ServeOne as a nonprofit in 2020. And I launched it on 10/10/2020.
So before we go into ServeOne, I just want to make very clear here your maybe your service history. I think you just glanced over it, but I assume your military. You have a military history that you'd like to speak of a little bit with respect to your own credentials, please.
Actually, I don't have any military history. I respect the military tremendously, and my father served in the Air Force, and I have many friends that have done service. And, when I was growing up and a teenager and had to sign up for the volunteer service and possibly conscripted, Vietnam had just happened. And this was a really difficult situation where a lot of people were not wanting to participate in that kind of an action. It wasn't the same kind of heroicism that we saw during World War II. And at the same time, I was willing to do service, and I had done service. I had built homes with various mission organizations throughout the Appalachia areas. And I really valued, again, the perspective that gave me and seeing the kind of, opportunity that I could bring to create a home for people that didn't have them.
Right. Okay. So what I get then is, along with not actually being officially of service, your commitment and dedication to broadening the base of life experience for yourself en route to gaining some perspective or some capacity towards wisdom is something that's been fairly lifelong. Is that right?
Absolutely.
Okay. All right. Well, tell us a little bit about this organization that you've developed now.
So when I ask myself what I can give back and what I've learned, and I look at the opportunities that exist, and what I was touching on with less than 2% of our youth doing civil service in the form of military, and that not being suitable for many people. And I also know that so many of us share a common experience of looking to, have and find purpose in our life, particularly when we're in our teen years and we're struggling to define ourselves, oftentimes in juxtaposition from our parents, which is even harder when you actually have the same name as one of them. And so when you're trying to find that purpose, oftentimes you do it through, making a lot of mistakes, sometimes quite intentionally, because you make bad choices just to define yourself, like I said, in juxtaposition to your parents.
Interesting.
And, there are so many other ways to find purpose, and going out and serving in the military is one of a good option for many people. And so I said, but what about the other 98%? I actually like to call them the 97, because I don't think any solution should necessarily, work for 100% of people. I think that there's always going to be somebody that just doesn't fit. So I said, what about the other 97%? And of those, they're not doing the kind of civil service that those who go in the military are. And to really come to an appreciation for the blessings they have for being born in this country. And I see, they don't have perspective in many cases. I've been out here in California since I was 19. And like I said, I had a very fortunate, in my case, middle class existence when I was growing up. And I know that I was blessed, but I still couldn't understand how much it was until I went out and started doing things, like I said, building homes for people that didn't even have a home or were living in a shack.
Part of the expansion is what you're pointing to, is that seeing not only seeing the broad-based experience of what life has to offer, but also seeing maybe less privileged, or people who are living with less resources, or people who are struggling in life, or people who are, going through some kinds of hardships that we don't even consider possible in our existence, that just being exposed to that creates a greater perspective, and maybe is a conduit to greater wisdom.
100%. So
beautiful.
For example, we both, I think, know the story of Scott Harrison, who's the founder of Charity Water. So this is a man who's built a tremendous organization that's gone out and been digging tens of thousands of wells for people in countries that don't have clean drinking water. Well, that's not something that you and I deal with on a daily basis, what a concern or the consequences of not having clean drinking water. And were we to see that like Scott did, we might find ourselves with more perspective and purpose in our life. And that's what I see ServeOne creating the opportunity for, is by doing a year of service, ServeOne, that's the basis of it, that will get youth to have more perspective in their life and therefore more purpose.
Okay, I got that. So let's back up a little bit because I think we've come at this a little piecemeal to this point. Let's get the baseline format of what ServeOne is about. Like, I want to know about ServeOne, and I'd love for you to tell me, let's say I just showed up at your door and I heard you're the man for ServeOne. So why don't you let me know what is ServeOne, and what is its design? How I want my son, or I want my nephew or my neighbor to really look into this. What would they be looking at, and what group is involved, and what can we expect?
ServeOne will be combining leadership programs for youth 13 to 23 with opportunities to do community service through existing service organizations. So that way youth gain more perspective and have purpose and passion to have a positive impact on the people and the planet. So the idea is that ServeOne is about building both leadership and youth through youth development in the youth and personal development, like we talk about, and then opportunities to do community service that give them perspective on the blessings they have here in America, and ideally send them back with more passion to do something with their life that may have greater meaning than figuring out the next hot video game that they could make a lot of money on, or what.
Mm-hmm. And sending them back, you mean back to their neighborhood, back to their home, back to where they, what does back mean?
Return them to their life. So now from 13 to 23, the idea is that they would have done either cumulatively or consecutively a year of service. So a 13-year-old isn't going to go away for a year and do a year of service. So starting with things like weekend service opportunities, later on week long, and then maybe even month long, that would be the kind of thing that as they get older that we would be working on and doing. So during school breaks and summer programs, etc. And then combining that, like I said, with youth development programs. And so imagine that what we have in ServeOne are two round tables of thought leaders in the personal development school. And we identify those things that are worth teaching to youth and the best ways to teach them at those different ages. And then community service partners. And so at that round table, you might have everything from local communities who are involved in homeless shelters, food and meal service, stream or beach cleanup projects, and then going on to things like Habitat for Humanity, AmeriCorps, internationally into organizations such as Charity Water, and Peace Corps, or Doctors Without Border. And to go ahead and create relationships with these organizations where we funnel youth that we've been working on with to help get some perspective in their personal development and give them the opportunity to do service in a manner that's suitable for their age and situation.
Now, where are we going to find these youth? Are we going to go out and find them? Are they going to find us? Is there some combination? Is it referrals from school and legal system, or what are we really looking at? Or are we just are we talking about marketing and making it an obvious thing like Big Brothers and Big Sisters is, or how's this thing going to launch so that everyone knows about it? Everyone who needs to know or who can benefit knows that it's a possibility.
Right. Well, so the plan is to start smaller and local with younger kids and continue to expand and advance the youth through the programs and expand out regionally, and then go national and take the programs into international organizations. So in some cases, youth that'll be participating might be from affluent homes where they would pay to help carry their way for the participation. And those fees would also help provide scholarships for youth that can't afford to go. And then there's also, as a 501c3, obviously we'll be seeking contributions, and we're working with creating sister organizations that will help support 100% of the administrative costs of ServeOne. So that way, all other contributions to the organization would 100% go to programs.
Mm-hmm.
And youth would also, in addition to by far the greatest being the intrinsic benefits that they would get, would also ideally be receiving as well credits for school, for the different programs they participate in, also scholarships, resources in terms of maybe discounted access to small business loans or housing loans, sort of like a VA style benefit. These would be some of the things that are in the vision of ServeOne. So to the point where parents who are looking at their teenagers who may have not participated in a program such as ServeOne when they're about to go into college and don't have the kind of purpose in their life that really is probably worthy of spending that kind of tuition for a first-year college student at universities such as, USC or UCLA, which are quite expensive, can get an opportunity, like I said, to have, and maybe in their case, a year of service consecutively in a gap year, as we often call it, and get more perspective in their life. So that way they come back with more, passion for the kinds of things that they want to work on.
Yeah. So passion and groundedness and purpose and reliability, accountability, responsibility. These are things that would seem to me to be natural correlated outgrowths of this 1 year, especially for, when I imagine this group who's in the gap year between high school and why the heck would I go to college anyways kind of group.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's really great. So it's amazing. And one of the things I wanted to really ask you, and we didn't touch on this in our previous conversations, is there's something about this resonating with you. And we talked earlier in the introduction, sort of who we are in between our ancestry and our legacy, being certain, or at least giving a real good shot to leave something here that's going to outlive us and make a difference for the human race, for humanity moving forward. And it sounds like for you, this is one of those contributions, if not the opus contribution that you're intending to make. First of all, is that so? And then secondly, tell us a little bit about this experience of how it resonates with your life, its failures, its successes, where you've been, where you're going, and and probably the humility, maybe, or at least the sense of I don't know, maybe there's a sense of accomplishment here of having created something that's actually worthwhile.
Well, it's 100% consistent with my intention to leave a legacy and to take the lessons that I've learned, which I just touched on, was starting with the idea of wisdom and went on and gave examples of perspective from youth that are able to travel for various reasons or be exposed to things on a very short time period when they got matched up with a big brother or a big sister, and to kind of see the outcomes that come out of that. And it's also consistent with my personal passion and commitment to personal development. And it's, to me, part of the gift that I can give back, because I think that that's lacking to a great extent in our public school and even our private school system, is a strong personal development program. And so, I see at the round table of youth development, thought leaders from programs such as Tony Robbins, Landmark, many, many other, John Maxwell, even Sanyika, the Firestarter Street, who was on your series. These are people who are themselves passionate about personal development. And having that opportunity to share that passion with youth and create an experience for them, I think, for me, this is all about the contribution I'd like to make to what I call creating an upward spiral or supporting an upward spiral in humanity.
Amen. So we're really talking about the future of humanity. We're talking about, that being personified in our youth. That the 13 to 23-year-olds are a group of, human beings who are ready to be activated in one direction or another. We both know we were once 13 and 20, to 23 ourselves. And there's something like, wow, the impact that we can make by setting the direction straight with that group is relatively immeasurable, astonishing, and if we set a direction or a purpose with that group, the likelihood of at least having a possibility of an upward spiral becomes very real.
Yeah. And I want to be clear on, ServeOne and my vision here has no final commitment or say into what you should do with your experience.
Right.
Merely that once you have it, answers will come to you.
Right. Right. That makes so much sense. That's just like organically as one, through the source of wisdom, this wisdom thing that, that you were speaking of earlier, that by broadening one's perceptual base, wisdom comes, and then how and why to do whatever it is there is to do has a new level of sensibility, or a new level of groundedness, a new level of organicity, having had a broader base. Is that what you're referring to?
Yeah. So imagine that youth are starting off in their experience of ServeOne, and what's happening is that, now we're starting with teaching them some of these programs in personal development, but we're also doing some assessment with them. So we're doing some vocational assessment, and we find out that, some youth are more proficient in engineering skills, others in linguistic skills, et cetera. And so we're going to make recommendations as to which service programs they'd be best suited to participate in. So whether if they have linguistic skills, it might be teaching English to youngsters in different countries, or if they have an engineering bend in their acumen, then maybe it's more helping with building wells or irrigation systems or other techniques in farming or home manufacturing, et cetera. There's so many different skill sets that we can tap into based on the strengths of the individual that we'll be exploring while we're developing them, that we can create a better match for them. So, for example, in the Big Brothers and Big Sisters, we like to say it's about bringing a life alongside yours, a youth alongside your life. We don't want you to do something different. We want you to share what you're passionate about. In this case, what we're looking to do is to find out what the youth, what each individual, where their strengths are, and try and find the best fit for the experience that they might have with the different service organizations that they would be sponsored into.
Interesting. So there's a couple things here that I'd like to point to. So not only might there be an initial aptitude in one direction or another, you point to engineering or linguistics, but there also might be, I might not know, for instance, Richard, that I'm a great saxophone player. I might not know it. I never actually picked up a sax, and but it's so maybe when I do finally pick up a saxophone, which I've been wanting to do for 62 and a half years, but that actually is a different topic altogether. I might learn then that I'm an amazing saxophone player, and that I love it more than anything else. And one of the things you're pointing to here is that in this opportunity of pursuing that which I love doing already, or that which I'm already have some superior aptitude in, I'm also going to get to exposure to many things I didn't even know I didn't know about.
Exactly.
And in those, that's maybe where the broad base of my perception can come from.
Exactly.
That's fabulous.
Exactly. And there's a natural fit there that's going to have a higher likelihood of coming out because of that.
That's just fabulous. That's unbelievable. So thank you for ServeOne. And you're right. It's in its infancy, right? So if I was somebody now listening to you, I'm like, I want to be a mentor. I want to be a contributor. I want to follow the growth and development of ServeOne, or I want to, I want to talk to Richard Million Burke Jr. about what he's up to in his life and how can I be part of ServeOne? Have you got a way for some of our listeners to pursue you a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. I am very interested in finding the people that are looking for ways to participate and connect and support the organization and help build its vision. Because like I said, I talked about the two roundtables of, youth development and also in community service. But there's another one, which is the whole administrative approach of how are we tying this all together? What are the standards by which a community service organization would have to commit, such as things like child safety, et cetera, to be able to access the youth and be part of the ServeOne organization. And so I'm going to need people in that area as well. All of this. And so the best way to reach me would be through email at this point. And my email is rmburke, that's RMBURKE, at serveone.org. That's SERVEONE.org.
Okay. So rmburke at serveone.org will give people access to where they might want to raise their hand and say, I can do this, or I'm wondering how I can be best used. I'm wondering where I'm wanted and needed. And this would be a place for you to meet people or them to meet you and perhaps get access. Maybe they're big fans of you already, or maybe they're big fans of Big Brothers, Big Sisters already, or maybe they're already on some board in Tony Robbins or Maxwell, or maybe there's something, they're already community service leaders and completely interested in pouring it back, or maybe they're really interested in designing appropriate infrastructure for such a new it's kind of a really new idea built on the shoulders of other ideas that looked like it in the past, but still something entirely new.
Right. ServeOne is meant to create the unique combination of these elements. So we've talked before that organizations such as Landmark have wonderful teen programs, as do many others. And it's combining those programs without necessarily giving anyone control with the community service opportunities.
Right.
And helping to build, it's the combination that ServeOne is about. And then also trying to help, like I said, deliver additional value beyond just the extraordinary and intrinsic experience that the youth will have going through this to get other benefits. So if you could imagine, like I said, you're looking at your teenager who's about to graduate high school and wants you to pick up the tab for, who knows, $40,000 to attend one of the fine, top 10 schools in your location of the country. And you're thinking, this just doesn't make sense, especially given, the really the lack of purpose yet in this person's life to really leverage that opportunity and the opportunity to get scholarships as a result of going through this. We talked before that, if you had two identical youth that you were looking at hiring or bringing into your school, and obviously there's no such thing as two identical, but for the sake of argument, and one of them was an Eagle Scout, the value of having that experience and that commitment and going through that of the Eagle Scout would weigh tremendously in their favor. And that's what I want to have happen as a result of somebody participating in ServeOne and having done a year of service through between those ages.
Thank you. Really great. So there's something very honorable about it. There's something, in some ways I would say, it's sort of lofty expectations that are then very realistically offered to these children or to these young adolescents, or in fact to these young adults who are about to launch a life that's complicated. I mean, it's complicated out here. If you haven't noticed, it's really actually quite complicated out here to even take one more step or to even blink one more time. And if we have that, like if we really have that, there's a backdrop of a purpose. There's something really, really beautiful about what you're offering here on it couldn't be a better time, really. The aimlessness that's out here, now that schools are disassembling, education is taking a new track. There's just so many different things that are going to leave our youth without an obvious point of direction. And boy, this catches on, and it sure is more than likely. I mean, let's just declare it, and having caught on. That what you're providing for humanity is large and may even have global implications. So thank you for doing that.
Well, that is the whole idea. But, like I said, it's fulfilling my purpose and my opportunity, and the ability that I'll have to meet amazing people and help leverage the impact that we can have on this youth is going to be tremendous. You and I are of similar generation. And, I grew up in Michigan mowing lawns before I was 10 years old, and in my teens, and shoveling driveways in the winter, delivering papers.
I did the same things in the same neighborhood, all three of those things. Detroit News, Detroit Free Press every morning. I was
That's
there at
right.
5:30. Yep.
And what people don't realize is delivering papers
I love that job.
Was a different experience than it is now. Now it's somebody that drives around and throws them out a window, and you get a bill over the internet or in your email or maybe in the mail that you pay. And back then it was collecting. I had to go out and collect. Right. And then also, if I was riding past your house every day to deliver that paper 7 days a week, and
by the way, that I folded and put a rubber band around or tucked into each other each and every day, and counted and made sure I filled, and I did all of that, and I made sure that you got the paper you paid for every day.
And you couldn't do it. You couldn't throw it on the driveway because there was rain and other issues. I had to walk it up and put it inside your storm door.
Love that job.
But if I was going by your house and you weren't taking it, you were a lost opportunity for me. I was still going by there and I wasn't making any money, and you weren't getting the benefit of reading it. And so every time I saw you, I would explain the reasons why you should take my paper.
Right.
And that's the kind of experience that gave me the resiliency to deal with rejection and failure. And you can go on, and the chores and the other things. And I don't see that these days. I don't see that being done. I see kids getting allowances without doing these kinds of things. I see parents that are, it's almost 50% of the households, I don't know what the exact number is these days, are divorced, and parents are often afraid to impose loving discipline and with their children to give them these kinds of experiences. And that's why I think that ServeOne is more timely and important than ever.
Well, I couldn't agree more. I have to tell you, I'm now swimming in that whole experience of waking up in the morning, sometimes on those cold, snowy days, driving all the way to the garage where the Free Press was held, packing those papers, freezing my hands off, putting them on those little stack on my back of my Schwinn that had that little thing that allowed the bags to sit there without going into my tires, and making sure that there was enough air in those tires, and then heading down my route and making sure that I put a check mark about every house that I hit, and the ones that were on vacation, making sure not to bring papers to them. And don't forget the Wednesday and Sunday people, or just the Saturday and Sunday people, or just the week people, and the sports page and the comic section on Sunday, and then having to go around once a week and gather up my 85 cents and put a check mark in my little look.
That was great.
This was just great. It was just a great job. I got my first television. And you might even know how I did it already. I drove around with some dude's station wagon, going to neighborhoods that otherwise didn't have a very high free press.
You were building their route.
Door to door, asking them that, selling them the Sunday paper for 13 weeks, or
Yep.
And I got my little commission or whatever it was, and I could turn it in, and I got myself my first Zenith 12-inch black and white
Black and
TV.
white, right?
I adored that thing. That's
Yep.
so great. Awesome.
I even had a sled in the winter.
Oh yeah,
that had extra wide runners, so I could pull it across the drifts.
You're right. Exactly. I had that as well.
So did your papers.
Yep. Oh my God. Thanks for bringing that back to attention. It just, what's so funny here is that, I think that the youth, and there's hopefully some people who are smiling at our shared experience there, just one of many, by the way, right? We have lots of shared experiences. I don't feel so different from that dude. I am him. Here I am. What we're really talking, I was doing that when I was 13. We really are talking 50 solid years ago. And although it looks like I've grown up and had a whole load of experiences, and indeed I have grown up and have had a whole lot of experiences, ultimately from within inside me, I would love to do that job again tomorrow. I am that same guy who did that job. And that job really contributed so deeply to my work ethic today.
Yep. Yeah, there was no days off.
No days off.
Right.
No days off. There was no days off. And when I took vacation or my parents took me up to a weekend, I worked hard to find somebody to cover my route.
Yeah, you had to find somebody good.
Yeah. If somebody good, right. And then I would hear about it, right? If they didn't put it in the door, then I'd be like, what is the deal here? And then I wouldn't get the tip that week that I had gotten or something.
Right.
Oh my goodness. Thanks for bringing that to attention. Those are really remarkable times how we've lived this life of ours, really.
Right. And just to continue here on this opportunity with ServeOne, I see taking youngsters out into the community and meeting families where they build a connection that maybe after getting to know them, their heart is broken in that they're going to be leaving. And there's a connection that they then may have the opportunity to maintain in some perspective, but it'll be in their heart.
Mm-hmm. Right. So in some ways, you're also, I think this is what you're pointing to, Richard, is that those people who contribute, us adults, or maybe us privileged adults, or those who can offer infrastructural support or community support or some thought leader support, there's as much in it for us as it is for them.
100%. That's the beauty of this. For me, this isn't really as altruistic as it is. This is selfish because I have to do this.
Yes, right.
I have to do this. And I'm loving it. I love every time I get a chance to talk to somebody about it. People recognize the need for it. There are so many ways that they can participate, whether that's through the service organizations they're already aligned with, or their own commitments to personal development, et cetera. There's so many ways this is going to grow and explode that I'm so excited. And like you said, these youth are ready to be activated. I love that.
Indeed. Thank you. All right. Well, before we wind down, I'm gonna change the topic a bit. I'm gonna go out of the wake a little bit and come on a new topic, which is tell us a little bit about what makes your heart sing now? What maybe a little bit about your family, or what about your life outside or next to this stuff? What have you become, and who are you today? And who does your family, your friends, your colleagues, who do they know when they say Richard Million Burke Jr.? What do they know you as, and what do you know you as?
Sanyika calls me the king of consistency, and what I know myself as is somebody that's always been committed to personal development, because I love the idea that if I can own my failure, I can fix it. And so constantly trying to understand what it is that I did wrong and I need to do right. That's something that I've taken with me for a long time. There was a time when I was in high school, I swam competitively on the swim team. And I did it because the guys I liked hanging out with were on the swim team. And I missed seeing them and hanging out with them when they had to go to practice during the swim season. And so I joined. And because I didn't have the years of competitive swimming that they had. I knew how to swim, but I didn't have those years of competitive training. I wasn't a first place swimmer. And so there was a point when I was going to quit. And I said, guys, I just can't take these first place. And I never getting a first place. And they said, you don't understand. We need you. And I'm like, what do you mean? And they said, we could take every first place in a meet. And if the other team takes all the seconds and thirds, because we've got no depth to our team, we'll lose the meet on points. And so all of a sudden I saw that I could contribute from a supporting role. And that was something that shaped me tremendously. And I've been married twice. I like to say that, I was with my first wife for 10 years and my second for 20. So, if I'm going to get married again, since I'm doubling, it might be for 40. So I'm being real careful.
Yeah. You got to look carefully at this point. These 40 years are key. Yeah.
Yeah. And, I went through a very, difficult, divorce with with my first wife. And, I knew that when I was entering into it, I needed two things. I needed a good lawyer and I needed a good therapist, because I needed to know what part of it I needed to own. And, unfortunately that divorce got into a situation where it turned into a custody battle and there was alienation going on. And it was finally when no longer could I ask the courts to step in and enforce my rights to see the children, which I had the rights to see 50%, but wasn't seeing. I wasn't seeing at all for several years. And I finally had to give up on requesting the assistance of the court in enforcing those rights. And my therapist at that point, knowing I still had so much love to give to a child or children, had suggested I check out the Big Brothers and Big Sisters. And I did, and went all in. And I got a young man that I still am in touch with for now 13 years. In fact, I'll be seeing him later this week when I drive down towards San Diego on Friday. And it just was the game changer, was, as they say, taking, lemons and turning them into lemonade,
right,
and turning that all into that. And, now my kids are back in my life. And it's been wonderful. And, I know I grew out of it. So that's the kind of thing that when you can take those opportunities, I've had failed businesses. I had to learn what was my contribution, whether it was the choices I made, the way I reacted to market circumstances, et cetera, things that you might argue that are out of your control. But you have to look at what was within your control too. And, that's the kind of things that I've taken from, and the lessons that I've learned. And that's what I'm trying to put back into this opportunity to create, like I said, with ServeOne.
That's beautiful. Richard, I think it's very clear. First of all, a couple things come to mind. Number one, for the ladies who are listening, this is one seriously eligible bachelor, but let's not go too far down there. Number two, I think what we really got here is somebody, what I can hear in your voice is like, I think, wow, I would love to introduce any 13 to 23-year-old to you, and not only to you, but to anyone who's working around you, just knowing that you're washing over on them with that level of heart, that level of commitment to future humanity and legacy. I just honor who you are as a man. I honor who you are as a human. I honor who you are as a father. I honor who you are as just someone who's an adult and a kid, someone who really gets that there's an opportunity here to create something that will outlive you and leave it on the earth. So you get, so at least you made a speck of difference while you were here. So thank you for being you, Richard Million Burke.
Absolutely. Thank you. And I don't know when this will end up airing, but, we've all been going through for at least the last 6 months, this challenge, as they say, with the pandemic and the disruption that's created in all of our life. I want to suggest that people recognize that this has really been an opportunity. And for me, it's been a plandemic. And that's an opportunity to make a transition, not accept the status quo, and to really do the things that are meaningful in your life.
Thank you. Thank you. And for sure, we could have a whole nother hour on that topic alone. And I, there's some values and some thoughts and some ideas that are probably being overlooked or maybe are here to be really taken big bites out of. And we really are being given an opportunity each and every moment, no matter what's happening, but maybe even a little more amplified in these during the days since the outbreak. So thank you for pointing that out.
Absolutely.
So Richard Million Burke Jr. has been here with us today. And wow, do you guys see how terrific it is to be a host of a podcast called Welcome to Humanity? I mean, this is what I get to do. I get to meet humans at this caliber. And we get to, let these people just really talk to how magic and what they're up magically, but also pointing so directly at their baseline humanity. And Richard, I hope that was valuable for you, because for me, it was extraordinary. And, I'm quite certain I speak for most of our listeners that your vulnerability and your authenticity, your genuine humanity shines right through whether you want it to or not. And again, I really just appreciate who you are. And thank you so much for coming on the show as a guest. It's really been wonderful.
Thank you for the opportunity, Dr. Fred. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, my pleasure. All right, folks. Well, that's it for another incredible episode of Welcome to Humanity. It's just been an honor. And if you've lasted to us, with us up until this point, it's just great to have you here. Keep on listening. It's really wonderful. And wherever you are in your day, just have a great, wonderful rest of the day. Whatever happens is actually what is happening. And maybe there's an opportunity to look at it all and just get, it's all in the human experience. So welcome to humanity. Thank you so much for tuning in today. I really love this interview with Richard Million Burke Jr. I mean, what a cool dude. This is a guy who has really dedicated his life to making such a difference for our youth. And knowing that if you make difference for our youth, you're really making difference for the legacy in front of us. Like, there's an opportunity that this man has created, not only with his commitment to humanity, but his commitment to the young adult population through Big Brothers and Big Sisters, and now through ServeOne. So it's really, really remarkable to run into people who have dedicated their lives to the further advancement of the human race. And who better personifies that than Richard Million Burke Jr.? What a terrific interview. What an honor to be in the same space of such a beautiful man. So maybe as you were listening, you thought, well, I have a few people who would really benefit from hearing that episode. Go ahead and reach out to them right now and invite them to listen. And while they're at it, to subscribe to the Welcome to Humanity podcast. I'd like to ask a favor of you that is small in effort, though it's really big in terms of impact. First, could you take just a moment and hit the subscribe button on your podcast player? And that way you can be certain to get all the latest episodes as they become available. And next, if you appreciate what we're doing here, take a few minutes and leave a positive review on the podcast channel. Subscribes and reviews are the two major ways we can reach more listeners with the Welcome to Humanity podcast. And if these conversations we're having here are moving you, go ahead, pay it forward by subscribing and leaving a positive review. To catch up with past episodes, head on over to welcometohumanity.net/podcast. Until next time, well, this is Dr. Fred, and this has been another wonderful episode of the Welcome to Humanity podcast. Thanks for listening, everyone. Have a great day. See you next time.